The Galactic Council chose betrayal, so we humans gave them one final warning in return. Run like hell before we unleash our wrath. Captain Derek Coleman, once a hero of the Earth Space Navy for leading the charge against the Saurian invasion, now stood chained before a council of alien delegates who never lifted a finger to help during humanity's darkest hour. Their warships never came. Their soldiers never bled. Instead, the Galactic Council turned a blind eye as billions of human lives were snuffed out over 10 long years of war. Worst of all, the Saurian ambassador himself sat among the gallery of accusers, his serpentine eyes boring into Derek with undisguised hatred. Zephyr, the supreme commander who had ordered the bombings of human colonies, the butchering of surrendered soldiers, the enslavement of entire cities. The monster responsible for the death of Derek's wife and daughter. He perched in the stands, cloaked in diplomatic immunity, while Derek stood below in irons, facing a farce of a trial and certain execution. The Krellian Chief Justice screeched her condemnation of humanity's so-called war crimes, her tentacles flailing in self-righteous fury. But humanity itself was the real victim. Earth lay in ashes, its defiant people bloodied and battered, crying out for justice that would never come. Not as long as this sham Galactic Council played judge, jury, and executioner. Derek's Centaurian defense advocate offered some meek words of rebuttal, but his mumbling protest was quickly silenced by the Chief Justice's booming authority. Derek almost pitied his incompetent lawyer. The council had already decided his guilt long before he set foot in the chamber. This whole trial was a theatrical show to discredit Earth's resistance, to neuter humanity as a threat, before tossing his home to the wolves once more. But as the Chief Justice built to a crescendo, something inside Derek snapped. He threw his head back and loosed a howl of laughter that rang through the shocked chamber. Rising to his feet, he locked eyes with Zephyr, and a cruel smile split his face. Even if these were his final moments, he would make the Galactic Council regret the day they abandoned humanity. It was time Earth's enemies learned the true cost of betrayal. The entire chamber fell silent, stunned by Derek's wild, defiant laughter. His mirth echoed off the walls as he stood, eyes locked with Zephyr's. The serpentine eyes of his most hated foe narrowed. Derek sneered back, his face a rictus of fury and pain. He spat on the floor at Zephyr's feet. "You want to know the truth about humanity's supposed war crimes? I'll tell you everything," Derek snarled. "The real war criminals are in this room." Derek's mind reeled back to that fateful day 12 years ago. Earth's ambassadors had been excluded from a secret Galactic Council session. Behind closed doors, the Saurians had presented doctored evidence that humans were developing illegal nanoweapons. Grainy video, forged documents, false testimonies from Saurian plants. Humanity's supposed allies on the Council, already unnerved by Earth's meteoric rise, had seized on the flimsy pretext. In a 6-3 vote, the Council had suspended Earth's protected status. The Saurian warships appeared in the skies above Earth's cities mere hours later. Suddenly, without warning or formal declaration of war, the Saurians opened fire. Searing beams of plasma rained down on New York, London, Moscow, Beijing. Millions incinerated in seconds as the alien weaponry burned through buildings and boiled asphalt. Smoke and screams filled the air. Derek, a newly minted Navy lieutenant stationed on the orbital defense platform, barely escaped as the Saurian ships tore through humanity's paltry defenses. He clawed his way to an escape pod as the platform cracked apart around him, the shriek of rending metal joining the screams over the comms. On the surface, Earth's armies rallied to repel the invaders. Tanks rolled through the rubble-choked streets as soldiers and armed citizens fought back, but the Saurians' energy weapons and hovering attack craft cut through humanity's defenders like a plasma torch through butter. City blocks became blackened craters, neighborhoods transformed into body-strewn wastelands. In his hometown, Derek rallied the survivors, leading them in vicious guerrilla raids. They planted IEDs in the sewers, sniped Saurian officers from the ruins, set fuel depots ablaze. Derek's tactical cunning and the human spirit began to give the Saurians pause. But the aliens responded with unrestrained savagery, herding civilians into death camps, launching nerve gas attacks, turning their ship's cannons on hospitals and schools. Atrocity piled upon atrocity as the Saurians sought to crush the human resistance at any cost. Derek glared at Zephyr and the assembled council members, his eyes burning. This is the legacy of your betrayal. This is what your cowardice wrought. You turned your backs and Earth burned, and now you dare sit in judgment of those you abandoned to the slaughter. The Chief Justice rose, sputtering with indignation, but Derek roared over her. Damn your hypocrisy, damn your lies. Earth will have justice no matter the cost. Run back to your worlds and prepare, because humanity is coming for you all. Zephyr shot to his feet, his scales rippling with fury as he jabbed a clawed finger at Derek. Lies. This human dares to slander the Saurian Dominion with his baseless accuser. The Chief Justice slammed her gavel, silencing Zephyr's tirade. Her bulbous eyes narrowed as she leaned forward, fixing Derek with a probing stare. These are grave charges you bring against a sovereign member of this council. I trust you have evidence to support these claims? Derek met the Chief Justice's gaze unflinching. He tapped a control on the podium, and a holographic display flickered to life above the council floor. The blood drained from the faces of the assembled delegates as grainy security cam footage began to play. A bustling city street, humans going about their daily lives. Suddenly a Saurian dropship swoops into view, hovering above the terrified crowds. A hatch opens and canisters rain down, shattering on the pavement and releasing clouds of sickly green gas. The humans scatter in panic, but it's too late. They collapse to the ground, writhing in agony as the bioweapon ravages their bodies. Blood pours from their eyes, ears, noses, and mouths. Their skin bubbles and sloughs away, revealing liquefying flesh beneath. Derek forced himself to watch, even as bile rose in his throat. There, staggering and falling among the victims, he glimpsed the painfully familiar faces of his own parents in their final moments. A strangled sob escaped him. The council chamber erupted into bedlam as the footage ended. Delegates leapt to their feet, shouting and gesticulating wildly. Some denounced the video as a human fabrication. Others demanded an immediate halt to the proceedings pending a full investigation. Zephyr's face contorted with rage. He lunged at Derek, claws extended, murder in his eyes. Bailiffs tackled the Saurian before he could reach the stand, wrestling him to the floor as he thrashed and spat. Derek stood firm against the storm, his voice rising above the tumult. This is the truth the Saurians tried to hide. This is the evil the Galactic Council turned a blind eye to. The Chief Justice pounded her gavel futilely, desperately trying to restore order. Derek pressed on, undeterred. But humanity refused to submit. Even in our darkest hour we fought on. His voice dropped to a near whisper, and the chamber stilled. That's when our scientists made a breakthrough, a nanoweapon of our own, one that could target and neutralize the Saurian bioweapons on a molecular level. Zephyr, still pinned to the floor, let out a strangled hiss. Derek smiled grimly. I led the mission myself. An infiltration of the Saurian flagship to upload the nanoweapon control codes. It was a near-suicide run, but we did it. We goddamn did it. His eyes shone with fierce pride as he called up a new set of images. Scenes of the Saurian bioweapons dissolving into puddles of harmless sludge. Shots of human soldiers, their faces haggard but alight with joy, emerging from their bunkers to find the Saurian troops fleeing in disarray. Crowds of ragged civilians filling the ruined streets, cheering and weeping as they realized the tide had turned at last. Derek rounded on the council, his eyes blazing. We should have been hailed as heroes. The Saurians should have been dragged before a war crimes tribunal, but instead you moved to punish us for the weapons that saved our species from annihilation. The Chief Justice slammed her gavel down again and again, desperately trying to regain control. But the chamber had devolved into utter chaos. Councillors shouted over each other, some hurling accusations at Derek, others at their fellow delegates. Amidst the bedlam, Derek held up a hand. The gesture commanded such authority that the room gradually fell silent, all eyes turning to the human captain. He spoke softly, But his words carried the weight of worlds. That's not the worst of it. Derek typed a command into the holographic display. A new set of files appeared, each one marked with the seal of Earth's intelligence services. In the final days of the war, our operatives uncovered evidence of a conspiracy at the highest levels of galactic government. The Saurian invasion was not a unilateral action, but one aided and abetted by this very council. Zephyr and a handful of other councillors leapt to their feet, shouting denials, but their protests sounded hollow even to their own ears. Derek played the first recording. The holo display filled with the image of Zephyr, deep in conversation with a Saurian general. Thus, and once Earth falls, the Saurian Dominion will claim the Western Hemisphere as agreed. The rest will be divided between Krellian, Zorathian, and Berian spheres of influence. Similar recordings followed, each more damning than the last. Council members strategizing with Saurian commanders, logistical reports detailing councillor-approved shipments of weapons and supplies to the Saurian fleet. Meetings between Zephyr and the Saurian High Command, carving up Earth's territories like a roast. As the evidence played out, the accused councillors began to quietly slip away, melting into the shadows at the rear of the chamber. Their empty seats spoke louder than any confession. Derek's voice rose above the murmurs of shock and outrage. This council's hands are stained with human blood. Earth's suffering is on your heads. He turned to the few councillors who remained, his eyes burning with righteous fury. You dare sit in judgment of me. This trial is a sham, a ploy to bury the truth and hide your guilt. The Chief Justice shook her head, her tendrils quivering. The Galactic Council is a body of peace. These accusations are an insult to everything we stand for. Derek laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You stood by while the Saurians burned our world. You abandoned us, betrayed us. He leaned forward, his gaze sweeping the chamber, holding each councillor in turn. When he spoke again, his voice was cold and hard as iron. But we will not be caught unawares again. In the years since the war, Earth has been preparing. A hush fell over the room, taut with dread. Derek smiled, a thin, predatory thing. Our scientists have advanced the nano-weapon technology. The latest generation can target specific DNA strands, entire species, wiped out at the molecular level. An unimaginable horror, wouldn't you say? He locked eyes with Zephyr, still standing stunned and enraged. Derek's words dripped with venom. We showed restraint last time, halting our advance at your borders. But if you come for us again, we will not be so merciful. He raised his voice, addressing the entire assembly. Hear me now, councillors. Run back to your worlds, pray to whatever gods you hold dear that humanity's wrath never darkens your skies. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with fear and the weight of Derek's words. The once mighty Galactic Council cowed and trembling before a single human, a reckoning long overdue. Derek turned on his heel and strode from the chamber, his chains cast aside, head held high. The guards parted before him, unwilling to stand in the path of the man who had just brought an empire to its knees. As he passed through the great doors, Derek paused, looking back over his shoulder. His eyes found Zephyr's, and in that moment, a promise passed between them. A promise of retribution, of vengeance unrestrained. Then Derek was gone, vanishing into the light beyond the chamber. And in his wake, the Galactic Council began to crumble, the weight of its sins and hubris finally catching up to it. Utumbois. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.